Do your heart rate numbers seem to be a little bit abnormal when running in the cold weather? In today's video, I'm going to talk about some reasons that you might be seeing some wonky heart rate data in your winter runs. In my 5+ years of basically training exclusively by my heart rate, there's been a few times that I've noticed that the numbers that I'm seeing on my watch, courtesy of my heart rate strap, don't seem to line up at all with what I would expect them to be. And upon reflection, those discrepancies tend to happen when running in the colder winter weather. And yes, I lived in Florida for 5 of those years where cold isn't even an actual thing, but I still think there's something to this idea that cold weather impacts your heart rate, so bear with me, please. For the most part, I've always assumed that the discrepancies and the abnormalities that I've seen in my heart rate when it comes to running in colder than normal temperatures had to do with technology. But recently, one of the athletes I coached suggested that maybe there's a physiological component as well. So we're gonna look at both of those options today. I don't know that one is more right than the other. Quite frankly, I don't know if either of them are anywhere close to accurate. So that if you are seeing some wonky heart rate numbers, maybe it'll help you understand what's going on and maybe prevent you from freaking out, panicking, overreacting, basically being in a much ado about nothing type of situation. So let's start with the potential of a physiological explanation for why your heart rate maybe is quite a bit higher than you would expect it to be, especially in the early stages of your run. Like I said, one of my athletes mentioned this to me, and her husband is actually a doctor. She was talking to him about it. He's the one who gave her this little insight. She passed it along to me. So if my facts and figures are a little bit not accurate here, it's because we've been playing a game of telephone here, and you know what happens when you play telephone. Anyway, as I understand it from the good doctor, the reason that you might see a really high elevated heart rate at the beginning of a run has to do with the way our bodies react when we get plunged into a cold environment. And remember, cold is relative. All you northerners hating on those in the south that complain about cold weather when it's 40 degrees. In an attempt to not get too deep in the physiological weeds here, allow me to try to make this as simple as possible. So when you go out in the cold, vasoconstriction happens, which basically means that your blood vessels constrict. The diameter decreases. And there's a lot of physiological components to this and reasons why, and it's totally normal, natural, and actually it's kind of a life-preserving type of situation. But as it relates to our running and our heart rate data, when the vessels of your body constrict, your heart has to beat harder and more rapidly in order to help propel the blood to the extremities. And if you stop and think about it, as your running gets started, your demand for blood to the extremities, specifically to your legs, increases, but your body has to work harder to pump that blood to your legs, which means that the heart rate has to go up. It actually makes a lot of sense when you stop and think not just of the physiology, but also the physics behind it. Science for the win. When it comes to technology, basically, as far as I understand it, it comes down to a connection issue. And the connection being not between your watch and your heart rate strap, but actually between your heart rate strap and your skin. Now, it's not that you necessarily have a connection issue because you are wearing your heart rate strap. You are wearing your heart rate strap, right? But the electrical connectivity between your skin and the strap is reduced in cold, dry air. So what I think happens, and at least it seems to make sense in my experience, is that until you start to build up a little bit of a sweat, until you start to just have a little bit of moisture accumulate between your skin and your heart rate strap to help improve that connectivity and the electrical conduction that your heart rate strap is trying to measure, the numbers that you see are just kind of anybody's guess, which is why they might be very high, they might be very low, and you might even see some crazy jumps where your heart rate just kind of jumps 30, 40 beats per minute for no apparent reason, no change in pace, no change in effort. And I think that that's because the connectivity is just poor until you really get into your run a little bit. So what is the final answer? Is it physiological? Is it technological? Is it something else? I don't know. But what I have tended to notice over the years, both for myself and for other runners that I know that are using their heart rate straps and are bought into the heart rate training philosophies, is that somewhere a mile or two, 15, 20 minutes, something like that into the run, things kind of go from what the hell is going on to, all right, everything's back to normal. So what do you do? If you're all in on heart rate training like I am, you know that being in the right heart rate zones is kind of important and accuracy matters. How do you handle that first 15 or 20 minutes of your run? My advice is to just keep it simple as much as possible. You know if you're working really hard, if you're working at a 180, 190 beats per minute level or not. If you're into heart rate training, you're probably not. So don't overthink it. If you see some numbers on your watch, especially early in a run, that make zero sense, don't panic, don't overreact, just keep cruising. Keep it nice and simple, keep it nice and easy. And after 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, something like that, you'll notice that the heart rate alert stops going off. The numbers start to look a lot more like what you would expect them to look like. And then you can just keep on keeping on with the rest of your run, trusting that you're getting the benefit of heart rate training that you set out for from the beginning.